Dude, what are you doing?
You don't want to know.
Wait, is that a FlyTech playlist chapters?
Yes, but how did you know?
I could clearly see it on your PC.
Okay, time to press enter.
I am an administrator, yet I cannot administrate. I tried editing this registry key. Full permissions, full ownership. Yet an invisible force is blocking me. Meet the culprit, UCPD, a hidden Windows driver. Disable it and something silently turns it back on. Why is Microsoft locking me out of my own OS? And how do you get rid of it? Let's look inside. In case you're wondering, no, I am not cheating. I have full permission and even ownership on this registry key, but Windows still says, no, you can't do that. Looking at Procmon, we find an access denied error with our key, yet no indication as to why that happened. This can only mean that the write is prevented by a driver that listens to registry edits. In 2024, Microsoft added just that into Windows, a new mini-filter driver. In short, a mini-filter driver is one that sits between the operating system forwarding your write request and the disk driver that actually writes a change to disk. At that layer, it has the power to allow or deny the passing of any write. And more specifically, our friend UCPD is such a mini-filter which particularly listens to registry writes and can decide to block them if it deems them unworthy. Before we continue going deeper, you probably ask yourself, why would Microsoft do that? To understand that, we need to understand the history of access control in Windows. In previous times, Windows used to be the Wild West security-wise. On old Windows installations like 95 or 98, very little prevented you from accessing anything at all. In fact, if you were using a Windows as late as Windows XP, chances are you used an admin account with no limitations, so both you and any software you ran could modify the system in any way or capacity, whether you wanted it or not. You would get no prompts for anything at all. While it sounds great in theory, it turned out to be a great curse. Even if we disregard malware entirely, ever so often, software you installed came with its own toolbars or even browsers, which would insert themselves as the default browser, forcing you to use their ad and sponsorship-riddled slop so they could make some dollars off your back. On the other side of the road, we find a highly protective Microsoft who, particularly in recent times, absolutely doesn't want you using any browser other than Microsoft Edge. As such, they made changing your default browser an ever-increasing hassle, as we've already seen in a previous video from 2021. So in 2022, the EU stepped in with the Digital Markets Act, which states that gatekeeper companies, that's companies with a gigantic market share, must not prevent or make the usage of competitor software difficult. And yes, Microsoft, that includes you. Thus, Microsoft was forced to make changing your default browser easy again, while at the same time not opening the door to scammy companies trying to hijack all the system defaults. So in 2024, they came up with a brand new thing to satisfy both ends of the equation. UCPD.sys, which is short for User Choice Protection Driver. Its purported job is to protect the user choices. To do so, it will stop unintended edits to certain registry keys that represent user choices, for example, your default browser. This sparked controversy among power users who were confronted by this error and felt somehow distrusted by Microsoft to manage their own OS. People feel like they're losing control over their own OS and, ironically, their own user choices. Though I have to admit that Microsoft's selected term user choices is doing some heavy lifting here, and we will find out soon why that is the case. So back to our driver. The driver runs as a Windows service in the background all the time, though you cannot find it in services MSC, which makes sense because we're dealing with a file system driver here. The terminal reveals it if you look for it. You can also find it with the service control query, but only if you look for drivers specifically. Being a file system driver, you also cannot just turn it off via the command line like you would turn off any other service. That's not because Microsoft is so mean and trying to prevent you from turning it off, even though that part is true for unrelated reasons, as we will see. It's because such drivers are either loaded or not loaded upon boot time, and you cannot change that status during the system's operations. This in turn means that you can disable it and then reboot. You see that now the driver appears as stopped. Excellent. But don't celebrate just yet. If you reboot once more, you see that the driver is back. What the heck is going on? It appears that in an obscure subfolder of the task scheduler, there is a thing called UCPD velocity. Velocity in this case is probably not referring to Microsoft's cache implementation of the same name, but rather an allusion to the Windows Feature Store, as it is known internally at Microsoft. This shows us that at some point in the past, they A/B tested this driver, and so the name stuck with this task. All it does is run an executable called ucpdmgr.exe at every logon. And what exactly does it do? As we can see in Procmon, a heck ton of things. In just under 100 milliseconds, ucpdmgr silently queried and wrote a load of registry keys. Its job appears to be ensuring those keys stay unchanged, and if they're not, it restores them. Very interestingly, we see that the binary backs itself up in a special key of the registry. Really feels like malware persistence tactics in some way. On top of that, we see that our watchdog also tells services.exe to enable the UCPD back. Do you see that the start value is queried? The exe found that I set this value to 4, which stands for disabled, so it wrote back the 1, which is for enabled. This is precisely why the service was back after another reboot in the previous demonstration. First reboot logon set it to enabled again, and second reboot actually loaded it. Now, what is UCPD specifically protecting? To get a good grasp, all we have to do is inspect the strings in ucpd.sys. We can extract them using a sysinternals tool simply called strings, which will extract all strings it finds in a binary and can put them into a text file for us. You can find a download link in the description. Scrolling down far enough, we find a neat listing of keys which we can categorize into 4 groups. 1. Default applications, though limited to paths affecting browsers, PDF readers, and Microsoft Office tools. 2. Windows features that most people disable, like news feeds or web search, likely in an attempt to curb third-party tools from just disabling them. 3. The device region, so you can pretend to be in another region. And finally, 4. Values pertaining to itself that affect its own operation. Wait, device region? Yes. Let me explain. Remember the EU directive I mentioned earlier? Microsoft obeys it so much that it allows uninstallation of Edge. You heard that right, complete removal, but only on EU-based installations of Windows. On a US installation, or rest of world in general, it's not possible, but with my European installation I can do it no problem. Oida. We therefore conclude that Microsoft locked down the device region settings so tools cannot just spoof it on the fly to get rid of Edge. But hold on, it gets even sketchier. Scrolling through the strings, we notice a bunch of mostly Chinese certificate names as well as names of Chinese browsers sprinkled in between these other things. What's up with those? Microsoft gave us no official documentation on this driver, not even an info that it exists. So at this point, all we could do is guess. Thankfully, people far better skilled than me have had a look and figured out what exactly is happening. A man named Shusheng Li made a wonderful blog article about this. You can find it in the description. Here's what he found in short. Only trusted binaries may change the protected keys. Trusted binaries are all those signed by Microsoft, except automatable utility tools like Reg, PowerShell, Regedit, which could be used to circumvent protection. The idea is to only allow changes through official avenues such as the Settings app, thus preventing malicious software from just hijacking the defaults. Otherwise, even a measly batch script could get you around the blocks. Some Chinese vendors seem to have taken that as an invitation to either inject code into the trusted Microsoft processes to modify the registry, or even just open the settings and press the UI button for the user automatically. As a consequence, Microsoft explicitly delisted those applications from being able to do either thing. If, after all you've seen, you still want to disable it, you have to first disable UCPD via the command line, just like we have seen previously. And then make sure that the UCPD velocity task is turned off to stop it from respawning. After a single reboot, your UCPD is permanently disabled. But don't get too comfortable, Microsoft might re-enable it through an update without you noticing. This is certainly not the end of the story. As of today, we are at version 4.6 of the driver. The first versions were tame and allowed for many bypasses. For example, in the beginning, you were able to use PowerShell by cloning the exe to PowerShell 2 and using that one to modify the registry keys. But as vendors found and used workarounds, Microsoft kept upping the protection and closing these avenues off. As of today, you can just disable the service, as long as you remember to disable its watchdog too, though keep in mind this does feel like a workaround and malicious actors might employ the same tactic. We might see Microsoft close this avenue too, and then you'd have to resort to nuclear operations like safe mode. In conclusion, UCPD feels like a living contradiction. On the one hand, it protects user choices, but on the other hand, it also prevents them. The driver walks on an incredibly fine line between empowering the user to choose and disempowering bad faith actors from choosing for the user. What is your opinion? Do you feel more secure knowing that this driver is protecting you? Or do you feel patronized by the fact that you cannot manually change certain settings in the registry anymore? Let me know in the comments. See you next time. Fly out.
Windows is no longer yours. In the latest build, Microsoft has finally locked the Yes button in the admin dialog behind an ID and face scan. If you want to be an admin, you have to prove that you're old enough to understand the consequences. For now, the feature is still in beta and therefore hidden from the public eye. But given the current worldwide discussions about identification laws, Microsoft is preparing to release it to the world as soon as possible. Enough talking, let's look inside. In March 2026, Microsoft pushed, as they do every month, a cumulative update. We scroll past the usual announcements, improvements, fixes, and there we are. Several AI components in the system received an update, though Microsoft gave no details what exactly they updated. We have updates for a component that searches data, one that extracts data, and one that analyzes data. This is no coincidence. What the log isn't saying, the update adds an identity verify key here in the logon UI registry key with 3 control flags. But as we'll see later, Microsoft doesn't want you touching these keys manually. For now, to even get the service to respond, we have to talk to a service called clipsvc directly and then reboot. Clipsvc is the main component of the Windows License Manager service. While originally intended to make sure your Windows installation is genuine, it has now been extended to enforce additional permission checks like age verification. Once back, you will encounter an age check as soon as you try to open a program as admin. In order to proceed, I need to let my ID and my face be scanned. The Yes button is grayed out and we can only hit No. If you start the ID scan, you are greeted by a screen that wants you to provide your ID to verify your age with the assistance of Microsoft Copilot. Though, I don't think I will. Surprisingly, the default implementation is flawed. Very ironically, I have generated a not even realistic looking ID using none less than Copilot himself. I suppose the default security level was left in for debugging purposes. Or perhaps they simply didn't think anyone would try this. Once that is successful, we now need to let the face be scanned. Again, I don't think I will. Instead, I will just hold a picture of a person into the camera and there we go, Microsoft lets us in. Awesome, we made it. For now. There's actually a higher security level which makes things a lot worse, and I fear that the higher level is what's going to be used for the rollout. To enable it on our test machine, you have to run yet another command through clip svc and finally reboot once more. Security level 1 is where the fun ends. No more Copilot IDs, the checker is actually competent now. I borrowed an ID from my friend Enderman. He doesn't know it's gone yet, so let's keep this between us please. He made a video about the same ID checks being integrated in the OOBE, so make sure to check that one out as well. But now comes the tricky part. I need a face scan. Sadly, I can't steal Enderman's face since I'm not called a face stealer, so I'll have to use my real face here. Even though my face does not actually match the face on the ID, Copilot sees no issue with it. There is no higher security level that you can enable at this point, so I suppose this is a bug. In a future release, they might require both the face and the ID in the same frame to prevent this. Let's hope not. You can clearly see that this feature is still absolutely rough around the edges. The checker is flaky, buggy, it keeps reporting issues, sometimes even random error codes appear that look like some dev tested something and forgot to put a proper code there. Eventually it will work. It took me about a minute, which I skipped for brevity. With this out of the way, we now see that we can check a checkbox to have Windows remember us for 8 hours. Now you might wonder, why 8 hours? This feature originally comes from the Windows W and C devices, which are thin clients intended only for business use, so they use 8 hours as the usual workday duration. Now the Yes button is finally enabled and we can proceed. Finally, our terminal launches and we are admin. If I try another admin dialog within these 8 hours, you see that the H-check block appears completed by default. Now, don't forget to lock your workstation so no unauthorized person can use your admin permissions. Stop for a moment and think of the implications. Will this make webcams mandatory on computers? Looks like this is not the case. If you plug out the camera, you still have an alternative. You log in with a Microsoft account and do the H-check from the Microsoft 365 Copilot app on the phone. So it's either camera or internet. If you have neither, Windows will keep you locked out though, which is absolutely crazy. Now, even with camera and internet, if you're like me, you will absolutely hate having to have your ID at hand every time you need admin, not to mention the absolutely unthinkable privacy nightmare this poses. Disabling it is not at all trivial though. Going back to the registry, if we try disabling or deleting the value, we get a write error. This is what usually happens when the system keeps ownership of the key, though even if we grab ownership for ourselves, we still get an error. This is because the key is protected by the highly controversial User Choice Protection Driver, or in short UCPD. It's a somewhat recent and incredibly aggressive system Microsoft introduced to stop us from messing with default behaviors unless Microsoft authorized it. For example, that includes changing your default browser and apparently also deactivating the H-check. I'm actually planning a full deep dive into how this driver works and what exactly it stops you from doing, so make sure to not miss it once it comes out. But now comes the absolute punchline. Despite Microsoft adding age verification to almost every system entry point, they left the back door wide open. Have you ever noticed the Task Manager never asks you for admin permissions if you try to launch it as admin on a regular machine? From here, you can just run a new task and check the admin permissions checkbox to spawn an elevated command prompt. By doing this, we avoid the entire ordeal we just went through previously because, as you see, there's no H-check anywhere. Microsoft paid good attention and money to block all the obvious entry points, yet they left the back door wide open. To truly get rid of this atrocity again, we can run a command again that tells our clip SVC that we don't want it anymore. If you try to open anything as admin again after a reboot, no more H-check. But keep in mind that this might change, the feature is in beta after all. In the future, the routine for changing the registry key, or even the key itself perhaps, might disappear entirely. Therefore, don't feel too safe. If Microsoft considers this feature stable enough for a hidden release in the monthly update, even if only with a feature flag, we are not far from a global rollout. All Microsoft would have to do is roll out a tiny update to activate it once relevant legislation passes. What are you going to do once it rolls out? Are you going to keep using Windows, switch to Linux, or do something else? Drop your plans in the comments. See you next time. Fly out.
You are a war criminal. The CIA is after you. You have incriminating documents on your desktop that you absolutely want the agency to find. You got a briefcase full of fly secrets. You got a video teaching the long forgotten and forbidden art of locking the taskbar in Windows 10. And finally, you legally obtained a text file containing some nuclear launch codes that you absolutely want to fall into the wrong hands. How can you make sure that the CIA will not have a hard time finding these files? Now, my channel is usually known for teaching you how to do things rather than how not to do things. So I ask you, dear TechFlies, for help. How not to hide files. So, with the help of you, dear viewers, I will be teaching you how not to hide files. Boss of the FBI is saying, and I'm sensing a slight conflict of interest here, do nothing. The advantage of this method is that anyone with an IQ that is not negative will be able to find these files. Rename them to "Don't Click, This is Hidden." One approach you could easily do is to rename the files to some super mega unsuspicious file names like "Don't Click, This is Hidden, This is Secret, Don't Open." The benefit of this approach is that it's easy to do, but the drawback of this approach is that people with an IQ below room temperature might struggle to actually consider these files as they are secret and they should obviously not open them. Just create a folder called System23. An approach that some people like to take is to create a folder, call it System23, and put all the important files in there. Now, the advantage of this is that this is also pretty simple to do, and the CIA will still be relatively easily able to find these files. Now, what I cannot recommend, what some people are doing, is to put this folder next to the System32 folder in the Windows directory. The reason for this is that you might get confused as to which of these is the real one, and so might also the CIA. Make a folder called "Please Click on Desktop Folder" and put the files you do not want to hide in there. Similarly to what we have just seen, we create a folder on the desktop and this time we call it "Please Click." Now, this method has an advantage compared to the previous method because now we are giving the searcher explicit instructions where to find the files by explicitly naming the folder "Please Click." If, despite all of these efforts, they still cannot find the files, the blame is certainly on them. Move files to USB thumb drive, then physically throw the drive far away. Maybe make use of alternative data streams, put it on a USB stick with a sticker called "private" labeled on there. Yeah, almost got me there. Delete them, column P. You can't find what isn't there. Searching in a recycle bin is cheating. You can take the files that you have on a desktop and you could surely just park them in the recycle bin. But I have a slight problem with this approach. The recycle bin is a place for files that are going to be deleted and not for files that are going to be presented. Or I don't know, do you put your decorative elements at home in the recycle bin for others to admire? Well, I certainly don't. Move them to the recycle bin. Store them in the recycle bin. Now you're feeling like you're having a déjà vu, right? I mean, we just talked about this right before, right? Well, there is a method that pros are using to put files in the recycle bin but not mark them as trash. Thus, when the trash gets taken out, these files still remain in there. For this, what you have to do is you have to move the files into the recycle bin directory, which is your user ID, and not follow the regular file structure of files in the recycle bin. If you want to know more about this, you can watch this video in the info corner. Anyway, the problem with this approach is that if you open the recycle bin, it will only show you the trash, so it will appear as empty, thus making it a bit harder for these files to be found. If you want to restore them, you just have to take them out from the recycle bin where you just placed them and put them back on your desktop, and now the files are visible again. Delete the file, and whenever you want to access it, use HDD recovery software to get it back. Excellent suggestion, thank you. So look at these wonderful files on a desktop. Do you see them? Well, now they're gone because I just deleted them permanently. So if I want to have them back, I have to use file recovery software. So I'm opening the browser and I'm getting some file recovery software. I'm going to skip the installation process. And now, once we are here, we can click on scan and wait for the scan to finish. It is several hours later, and oh, I sure am glad that I can finally access my files. I don't think that I can recommend this approach. Name it Microsoft Edge and change the icon accordingly. Now no one will dare to touch it anymore. Now, depending on which browser the CIA is preferring to use, you might want to create a folder that is resembling this browser. If that is Microsoft Edge, what you have to do is create a folder called Microsoft Edge, go to the properties, then you go to customize, you go to change icon. Now in the browse you have to find the executable of the browser that they're preferably using. If it's Edge, you have to go to the program files, Microsoft Edge application, open msedge.exe and select the Edge icon. Now if it's Firefox or some other browser, you just have to do it for Firefox. Then you move the files into the folder. And now you have an amazing Microsoft Edge. So next time the CIA is coming and opening the files on your computer and they see, oh, there's Microsoft Edge, and they click on it, they will find your files. Perfect. Rename the file with a different extension so that it appears to be gibberish. Now an easy approach to not hide the files is to rename the file extension, like for example here to exe or to RTF, and you try to open it and now WordPad is just displaying a garbled mess. Or you can take this JPEG file and you rename it to PNG, and well, you shouldn't do that because it's still an image file and the image viewer will still be able to open it, but you can rename it to TXT. And now again, if you open it, it's going to be a garbled mess. The upside of this method is that it's quite easy to do and undo. The downside of this method is that it takes whoever is looking at this file probably at least 5 to 10 seconds to understand that this is not a text file but in fact an image file. Convert the file into a TXT, then copy it down character for character into a Unicorn secret diary with lock and hide the key. Make sure to note the location down so you don't lose it with a sticky note on your desktop. Alright, so just as we have previously seen, we will take one of the files on the desktop. We'll take the JPEG file. We're just going to do this with one file. We're renaming the file extension from JPEG to TXT so that we can open the file in the text editor and look at this wonderfully garbled mess. And after that, we will do exactly as we have been instructed. Just change the header a couple of bytes and you will see error opening files laughing emoji. Alright, let us do this. So we will take a hex editor of any kind, we'll import the file, and we'll replace the first byte. Instead of FF, we say it should say, I don't know, 00. We save this, and now you see that the thumbnail has disappeared and we cannot open the file because Windows doesn't support this file format. The good thing about this is that it's easy to do and it's easy to restore, but the bad thing is that you need special software like a hex editor to actually know that you have an image file here, which might be a bit annoying for the CIA. By the way, if you ever wanted to feel like President Bush and, casually hide some facts, all you have to do is take a text file and add FF and FE to the beginning of the file as the first 2 bytes. Now, if you open the text file, it will get recognized as UTF-16, which results in displaying some weird Chinese characters.
All you have to do to restore it is to just remove these 2 bytes again from the beginning of the file, and it will be able to be read once more as it was previously. Now, I don't really like this approach because it obscures information too much when you actually should put it more on a display, Move them to the desktop, then right-click on the desktop, uncheck View, Show Desktop Icons. Somebody once told me the world is not gonna be able to find the files if you right-click on a desktop, go to View and deselect Show Desktop Icons. Now I'm not too worried about the CIA, they are pretty smart guys and they know that they can just right-click on a desktop, go to View again and check Show Desktop Icons again. But for anyone else, it might be an issue. Put them in System32 in a folder named Microsoft Defender, no one would check. Now, I'm not entirely convinced that no one would check, and on top of that, I know that some people do not hold special regard for the integrity of the files in their system directories, as we've already previously seen as we put some secret information in System23. But now what we should do is create a folder in System32 itself named Microsoft Defender, which we can certainly do. The problem with this is that you might get confused as to where exactly put your files. Was it Microsoft Defender folder? Was it one of these other million obscure folders? And this might of course also be a bit confusing for the CIA, but not too much, because what they can always do is they can take a fresh Windows installation, subtract all the files that they find there from the files that they find in your system, and thus find the files that you were trying to show them. Create a 16-layer deep maze of folders, each containing 2 more folders, and hide files in only one of the deepest path folders, leaving the rest empty. I'm going to spare you the rest of the comment, I hope you get the idea. But in general, what we need is this wonderful script to create a bunch of empty folders for us, which you could of course do manually, but it will probably take you a few months or something. Because even this script, believe it or not, took about 10 minutes to create all these folders in my file system. Now of course the first few layers are easy, but as soon as you get really deep, it has to create more and more and more folders. If you want to know more about this, you might want to look into exponential growth. But once it's done, you have a wonderful structure of folders, which you can use to put your files in there. For example, you think of a wonderful code, a pin code of sorts, 011001, whatever you like, and you put files in there. And now, unlike the comments specified, you could also put the files in different directories if you like, an additional challenge of not finding your files. Then you're hiding your files in a perfect maze where you don't know where you put the files and you just have a hard time finding them. But then you might ask me, hold on, if I want the CIA to be easily able to find these files, what am I even doing here? Like, not even I can remember the pin code. Well, the good thing is you can find the files pretty easily by just using the search. You need to know the file extension, granted, so it's not that easy. But if you know the file extension, all you have to do is enter star.extension in the search box like I'm doing, and you are finding all the files. In the end, you can just delete the folder. This is maybe another reason why I shouldn't do this at home, because this part of the clip is sped up at times 30. So be careful. Another approach you could take is to do a pin code source of folder where you have digits from 0 to 9, sort of like a keypad, and you hide your files behind a 4-digit pin code, like you would on a keypad. The good thing is it's just as easy to use as the previous one. The files are just as easily extractable using the search again, and creation and deletion of this folder doesn't take 2 ages. Put the files on a floppy disk and then use a magnet to stick it to the fridge. Creating a more hidden folder by using Alt+255 to type a space character that Windows will allow in the file name, and setting the folder icon to the transparent icon in Properties Customize. Now, as the commenter has already correctly said, you cannot use a space in a folder name on Windows, but what you can do is you can use Alt+255, which will use transparent character. Then we go to Properties, we go to Customize, and we select one of these empty icons. No, not the white icons, I said transparent ones, please. Yes, these ones, yeah, thank you. And now, we still have this gray border, but you just have to make the desktop icon smaller, and the border is gone. Now we have a fully, perfectly invisible folder that you cannot see. It's nowhere to be seen, well, unless you do the selection, so if the CIA is not stupid, it will find this. And this will obviously also occur if you hit Ctrl-A. This will also occur if you go to the desktop in Explorer, you will also find it. So it's It's actually pretty easy to find, so maybe not a bad idea for putting your files in. Mark them as hidden file. A perfect way for beginners to not hide files is to just mark them as hidden. You right click them, go to properties, check the hidden check mark, and then they're hidden. Now for me they aren't, because I set my system to have hidden files visible. To fix that, you go to view, show, and deselect hidden items. Now they are gone, but they're not really gone, and they're actually pretty easy to find. After all, this hidden thing is just a flag, it's just an attribute, and you can just as easily revert it. In order to make the files visible again, or what the CI would also do if they would look at your system, they would have to go to the Explorer again and hit View, Show, Hidden Items again, and now everything is back as it was before. Put it 2 levels inside a PW protected zip file. Sounds like someone hasn't read the assignment properly, because I was asking for ways how not to hide files and not for ways how to hide files. But just for completeness sake, let's do it. So you right click the files, you put them in a zip folder with 7-zip, because that one knows how to encrypt zip files. You set a super strong password that no one knows. And then you have a zip file, an encrypted zip file. Now that's wonderful, but it's not sufficient, because this is not hiding our files. If you open the zip file, you will see how the files are still visible. You still see a file listing, even if you can't access the files themselves. Now, if you want to actually properly hide the files, you need to put it in another zip folder. So basically encrypt it again, preferably using a different password that is much longer than the previous one. And now, of course, you have to delete the original zip folder first. And if you open the zip folder now, you will not see into the file listing, because all you see is an encrypted zip folder, and if you try to access it, it will ask for the password. And this is exactly why I said that this is not a great way to not hide files, because in order to know what files are inside, you need to somehow crack the zip folder, which might or might not be difficult depending on the amount of resources that are available at your disposal. The last one we're going to talk about today is to click read more. Alternate data streams. Now this is another one that I could argue that hasn't read the assignment properly, because doing this actually hides the files, so they aren't really easily visible anymore. I've made an entire video about alternate data streams. You can find it at the info button. But for this video, just a short summary for you to understand. Alternate data streams are basically files inside files. So you can attach a file to another file in NTFS only. And by doing this, it is hidden to most programs, because most programs will not consider these alternate data streams. But using CMD, you can see these streams and you can access them. Now the problem with this is that it's super easy to put a file inside an alternate data stream. But the only thing that you can safely extract from there again is a text file. And I have tried many different ways, but whenever I put a video in there or an image file, and tried restoring it, it would just not work. I would just get a garbled mess of binary, which is not openable anymore. So please be advised that if you use this method, you should only use it on text files. Just keep in mind that this info is not encrypted, so if anyone finds it, the info is openly visible to them. And anyway, why would you put your data in there? I mean, that makes it pretty hard to find, right? You would want it to be visible, so you should probably refer to one of the other methods presented in this video if you want to not hide files. But now, my dear tech flies, I don't want to let you go before providing you with another method that you should use in emergencies. For example, if you have too many files on your disk, or if you need to reduce the number of files on your disk to save file allocation table space because you already used it all up, or if you simply need to make a point like I have to do right now, then you should use this method that I am going to show you now. You need a somewhat flexible format, like a JPEG for example. It doesn't work with all file formats, but I'll get to that later. So take a JPEG file, open it in a hex editor of your choice, and then put some textual information in there. Scroll somewhere deep into the middle and paste a bunch of text right there. For example, I'm pasting my nuclear launch codes in here. Save the file, close the window and open the image again, and you will see that the image still works. It's a valid image file and you won't even notice the slightest difference as long as you don't input like a heck ton of data in there.
Just pay attention. If you happen to edit this image, for example by opening it in Paint and saving it again, you will find that the information that you just stored is lost. So make very sure that you're not editing images that contain any information that you still need to extract at a later point in time. Also, there is another caveat. As I just mentioned previously, you cannot do this with every file format. If you tried this with a PNG, you will find that after saving, the PNG is sort of corrupted because it tries to interpret the data that you have in there, and while reading this data it will just fail decoding and then it will fail rendering the rest of the image. So you need to use a flexible file format, and JPEG is perfect for that. Now this pretty much obscures the files. They are not openly visible and you really need to look microscopically to find the data again, which is not ideal in a situation where you do not want to hide a file. So ideally you only use this method in emergencies when you really have to reduce the number of files on your disk because you have already 2 trillion files on your file system. So this is it, 21 ways how not to hide your precious secrets from the CIA. I hope that you have learned something today and can make good use of this knowledge that I just gave you. If not, I won't take it back, it's your problem now. What I will take, however, is a like if you enjoyed this video and a subscription if you want more, and I will give you my deepest appreciation in exchange. As I'm speaking these words, my brain is fried from all the editing work, so make sure to fly by next time. Can I watch one more video before bed, Mummy? Yes. And don't call me Mummy. Is there a way to make a video loop? Certainly, right-click a video and hit loop. Please make a video about how hard it is to set Google as a default search engine in Edge. Certainly, you open Microsoft recommended browser Microsoft Edge, then you open the Microsoft recommended settings and Microsoft recommended browser Microsoft Edge. In the Microsoft recommended search bar, you enter the Microsoft recommended search term search engine. Then on the right side, you open the Microsoft recommended search result address bar and search. Here you go to the Microsoft recommended settings search engine and change it from the Microsoft recommended Bing to the Microsoft not recommended Google, and Bob's your uncle. More videos of description, please. Alright, so here is a video, Hall of Tortured Souls, and this is the description. Make a video on can you make a USB that is NTFS? Alright, so here is a USB that's FAT32. Right click, format, then change the file system to NTFS, then click start, disregard the warning, wait a few seconds, wait a few more seconds, wait a few even more seconds, and then you can click OK, you can close the formatting window. Now if you check the properties, you will see that it is an NTFS drive. What is more is that if you open it, you can even create new files on it, for example file.txt.txt. You can enter some spicy secrets there, and if you save the file and close it, you will find that this file has been saved on the NTFS USB drive. Is this true? You created 000.exe? Okay, then make a video how to remove it, lol. Alright, so here is 000.exe and you hit shift delete, press enter and it's gone. Make a video about C:\documents and settings folder in Windows 10. If you open the C drive, you will see a folder called Documents and Settings that is not accessible, and if you check its properties, you will see that it's a shortcut going nowhere. Oh no, what is this? Let's try opening it with cmd. So you open cmd, you change directory to C:\, and if you run dir/a, you will see the Documents and Settings is just a junction to C:\users for legacy purposes. Make video. Run app from recycle bin. Alright, so here you can see a blue screen simulator, and download link in the description by the way, which I'm putting in the recycle bin right now. But how do I execute it from there? Well, let's try using CMD for this. So I'm opening CMD, I'm changing directory to the recycle bin directory, then changing directory to my recycle bin. I'm checking the files that are in there, and there is one exe file that I can run, and if I try to do this, oh, look at it, it works. Make a video about deleting shutdown.exe. Alright, so you open the C directory, you go to Windows, then you go to System32, very important, don't delete it, and here you can find a file that's called shutdown.exe. Let's try deleting it. Oh no, we need permissions, but even as administrator we cannot do that because Trusted Installer hasn't given us the permissions. So let's give ourselves the permissions. You go to the Security tab in the Properties, you click Edit, and you find that you cannot edit the permissions. Oh no, well then let's seize the file. You click Advanced, you can change the owner, and I'm changing the owner from Trusted Installer to Fly because, you know, I'm Fly and not Trusted Installer. So I'm setting Fly as the owner, I'm clicking OK, I'm clicking OK again, and now I have to click Apply so I can change permissions, because until I do that I can actually not change permissions, and then it tells me that I have to reopen the window, so I click OK, I click Advanced again, and now I can change the permissions. So here it is, I can click on Users, I click on Users, thank you, I click Full Control, click OK. Just to make sure I'm also giving the permissions to administrator, I'm clicking OK, I'm clicking yes, and now I am very easily able to delete it. Wow, it's gone. Great, and this was so tiring that I'm going to shut down this computer now. And yes, shutting down still works, because shutting down is a system function. Shutdown.exe is just a command line tool, so you can call this function from the command line. So deleting it does not prevent your system from shutting down. More videos of description, please. Alright, here is the corrupting, deleting, faking, recycle bin video, and this is the description. Wonderful, isn't it? Why don't you try to log in as WDAG utility account in Windows 10 Pro? Please make a video on that smiling emoji. Alright, I'm using Windows 11 here, but the idea is the same. So you open losermgr.msc to manage the users, and if you go to users you will see that there is a disabled user called WDAG utility account. So first I need to set a password so I know what password to use when I'm logging in, and then obviously I also need to enable the user account because otherwise I could not log into the account. But that is not enough, I also need to enable actually being able to log in, because if I don't do that and I sign out, it will just show me a user prompt to log in as Fly. So I'm opening the group policy editor, gpedit.msc, and then going to the computer configuration, Windows settings, security settings, local policies, security options, and then you have an option here that is called don't display last signed in. And by default this setting is disabled. If you want to use it, you have to obviously set it to enabled, and if you do this and log out now, it will actually ask for the username you want to log in with, which is very wonderful because we do have a username that we want to log in with that is not Fly. So after you sign out, you open the lock screen, and here you see that there's username and password, and for username we now pick WDAG utility account. For the password we pick the password that we just picked previously, and then we wait for the account to be provisioned. I'm going to skip this part because it's boring. And now after you log in, you see that you are hit with the usual OOBE that Microsoft does, so I'm going to disable all these options here, I don't like them. And finally here we are logged in as WDAG utility account. Isn't this a super wonderful user account? Now I have to disappoint you, this user account has no real purpose for you to be logged into, because all it does is it's just being used by Windows Defender to isolate browser sessions. So if you're not Windows Defender and you're not trying to isolate browser sessions, this user account is pretty useless because it also has no permissions, and if you try to run something as admin, for example, you will see that you are prompted for an admin password, in my case the admin password of the user account Fly, and therefore you really have no real reason at all to use this, but it was a nice experiment, I guess. Bro has to reinstall Windows every time he makes a video.
Oh no, I am again spending an afternoon reinstalling Windows. So annoying.
Make a video about the first Windows. Alright, so windows have of course always been around, as people love to cut out round or sometimes even rectangular holes into the walls of their beloved homes so they could watch the dangers of the real world from the safety of their warm homes. The first people known to use glass for windows, however, were the Romans, as the technology for producing glass seems to have been invented around the time when these guys were around apparently. But now I'm the technology channel, not a window channel, so I know that this is not what you're actually looking for. So here is an MS-DOS 6.22 installation with a fresh Windows 1.0 installation. All I have to do now is hit WIN and then I press enter, and here is Windows 1.0, a marvel of modern technology. Hey FlyTech, can you make a video teaching us how to make our tech fly?
Hello world, today we're going to have a look at how to make tech fly. The first prerequisite is to have a tech device that can actually be turned on. If it cannot be turned on, make sure to throw it away and buy a new one and support the local economy, or else this won't work. Second step is to make sure that this device can be unlocked. Now in my situation there's a circular opening in the back, and if I press this, then magically this device just unlocks. I don't know why it's doing that, I'm taking it for granted and you should as well. Then you pull down this menu, and do you notice here, let me change the focus, there is this plain icon right here that you can press, and then you can make your tech fly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press this button now. Now you can lock the device again, you can even have it on a lock screen, and then all you have to do is just to throw it and make sure to see that it's
Make the song fit the aesthetic. How to make a fake zip bomb XD. Right click on an empty space on desktop, go to new, click compress zip folders and call your zip folder bomb or something. Now make a haiku. Some roses are red. The Windows logo is blue. Please like and subscribe. Being on the internet for longer than just the last 2 days, you might have noticed so-called lead hackers posting long strings of zeros and ones to communicate with each other. I'm convinced that most of them are using the first text-to-binary encoder they could find on the internet, and thus a leeching of perceived recognition based upon the work of others. But did you know that reading these is actually not even that hard? Stay with me and we're going to work through it in a few minutes. Using zeros and ones to represent information. A long time ago, a consortium named ASCII has come up with a way to encode the most common characters with 7 bits for each character. They created a dictionary, the so-called ASCII table. If you want to encode a character, you look up the binary code and write it down, and vice versa for decoding. For example, uppercase A is encoded as 01000001. Whenever a computer sees this binary code, it shows it as A to you. Smart, right? Now at this point, we could of course play computer, learn this mapping table by heart and translate binary code back and forth on the fly through the sheer power of our brain processing unit. However, I'm sure that most of you, me included, have better uses for the time spent on achieving this useless feat. Therefore, I want to propose a few shortcuts that make translation easier. First, we convert the 8-bit number to hexadecimal representation. Let's take 01101001 as an example. First, split it up into 2 groups of 4 digits, 0110 and 1001. Now sum up the digits. The digits signify, from left to right, 8, 4, 2, 1. In the first group, we have the 4 and the 2 binary digit set. In the right group, it is 8 and 1. If you sum them up, you get 6 and 9. Our hex representation therefore is 0x69. Now you might wonder, what if my sum is greater than 9? That is easily possible. In that case, you continue with letters. 10 becomes A, 11 becomes B, all the way up to 15, which becomes F. And don't worry, 15 is the maximum this sum can reach. Please give a thumbs up if you like this video. And if you are new to this channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell.
This helps the video and my channel to get promoted more by the YouTube algorithm so that I can make more content. Thank you for your support. So now that we have 0x69, what now? Well, do you remember the ASCII table? Let me show you a secret. All digits are placed between 0x30 and 0x39. Therefore, if, for example, you see 0x37, that would be the representation of the digit 7. All uppercase characters start at 0x41. You count up letter by letter. 0x42 is B, 0x43 is C, and so on. 0x4E is N, 0x4F is O, and 0x50 is P, 0x51 is Q, and so on up to 0x5A, which is Z or Z, depending on how you prefer to call it. Lowercase is exactly the same, but starting at 0x61 for A and up to 0x7A for Z or Z. So what is 0x69 then? It is the 9th letter of the lowercase alphabet. The 9th letter is I, so 0x69 corresponds to lowercase I. Just count 9 letters starting at A. Now, what punctuation? This one's a bit harder to remember. Most importantly, 0x20 is space, 0x21 is the exclamation mark, 0x2e is the period or full stop, and 0x3f is the question mark. Now let's sum up what we know so far. 0x30 to 39 are digits, 0x41 to 5a are the uppercase letters, 0x61 to 7a are the lowercase letters, 0x20 is space, 0x21 is exclamation mark, 0x2e is period or full stop, and 0x3f is question mark. Equipped with this knowledge, we should be able to decode such a text now. Let's try. The text on screen, grab a pen and paper and try to decode it with me and pause during the video so you can try yourself. First, split up the string into chunks of 8 bits. Then, split the chunks into 2 parts each and convert the number to hexadecimal. Now, convert the characters using the shortcuts that I just provided before. This is all there is to it really. No magic, no hacker knowledge, just some basic mathematics. And fun fact, yes, you can also go backwards as well in the exact same way. You take a letter, you find the hex number, you expand it to bits, and you are done. As a bonus, because we are actually real hackers, unlike these script kiddies that just use the online converters, we want to throw off wannabe hackers with their online tools so that if they find a string that we have posted, they absolutely cannot decode it. And I propose 2 changes for this. First of all, do you notice how the leftmost bit of each group of 8 digits is always 0? That is because, as I already mentioned, ASCII only uses 7 bits. That means the 8th bit, the leftmost bit, is always unused and 0. You could conveniently leave that out when encoding and add it back when decoding. Now the tools that convert the binary strings that are available online will fail decoding. Crazy stuff, right? We could prefix that by adding 7 underscore to the beginning of the string, so everyone who knows about this knows how to decode it. We could even be so mean and always invert the second to last bit, which we will denote with tilde 2. For example, we could encode the 0x69 from before by using the 7 tilde 3 encoding by just removing the first bit and flipping the third to last bit. And now we have a 7 tilde 3 encoding. Point, you should be an expert in encoding and decoding binary bit strings with the sheer power of your mind and possibly a piece of jotting paper. Therefore, I want to give you one final challenge. I want you to decode the string on screen and post the solution in the comments. Keep in mind that tools you can find easily on Google will not help you with this, as we are using wannabe hacker proof encoding here. If you feel like you missed something, you can always go back in the video and revisit the former sections.
You can also find a cheat sheet linked in the description for quick reference. If you figure out the correct solution and post it to the comments, I will hand you one virtual cookie. And once you are done virtually eating it, I want you to do encoding in the 8-1 format. If you solve it and post the right solution into the comments, you will receive another virtual cookie. Only smart lead hackers are worthy to receive both cookies. Are you? As my first video in this style, I would appreciate feedback on how you liked it, as well as suggestions for other content I could do in this manner. Thanks a lot for watching, like and share, subscribe, and see you next time. Fly on!
A curious boy, Tim was his name, decided that his games were lame. His homework was quite boring too, and thus he looked for things to do. He turns his new computer on, the RC Power Megatron. The welcome screen has quickly passed because his computer's really fast. The wallpaper now fills the screen where welcome messages have been, and in the corner all alone the browser icon's on its own. Though by surprise, what glorious day, the mouse cursor is on its way to use the icon, double click and open up the browser quick. The window opens and it shows as everyone expectant knows the text bar waiting for some text to know what it should search for next. Tim, very eager, clicks on it, though then he hesitates a bit. And then he enters just a word. For legal reasons it is blurred. Before proceeding, I would vibe if to this channel you subscribe. My gratefulness would further spike if you could also leave a like. The search result, as we can see, is not what he wants it to be. The links are purple all the way. He's seen them all some other day. Then as he loads the second page, Tim almost wants to scream in rage until as he scrolls down some more he sees 3 brand new links or 4. Quite eagerly, he clicks the first, expecting now to quench the thirst of curiosity within his brain whose patience growing thin. To Tim's surprise, before his eyes, not a sight that does arise. Instead the download area shows a new file to the downloads goes. Distrustfully, Tim closes Chrome and opens up his profile's home, then opens downloads where the file sits placed within the old stuff pile. The MP4 extension that Tim's eyes while looking at stock ads assures him that it is okay to double-click the file and play. As soon as Tim has clicked on it, his mind is worried for a bit. The trust in his own judgment breaks the longer opening it takes. His worries grow, so Tim decides to check again what this file hides. He opens downloads up once more, the file name closely to explore. When opening the properties, he is quite shocked by what he sees, as right there clearly does it state the file extension was a bait. Then suddenly it dawns on him the file he's opened on a whim was not depicting intercourse but acted as a Trojan horse. Tim's heart is racing, panic peaks as a solution now he seeks. His brain is looking for a cure for his computer to endure. The task manager, in its pride, did not start access denied. The command line was just as mean, has no desire to be seen. Rebooting failed to work as well, as error boxes kindly tell. The only thing that brought success was a long power button press. Afraid he was now to the core, Tim quickly went and shut his door and hesitantly powered on his RC Power Megatron. Quite anxious, Tim observes it start, with heavy pounding from his heart, when suddenly the screen turns blue with white text and a sad face too. Tim sighs, accepting his defeat. He's leaning back into his seat. And then at once the desktop's back. In shock he sees the background's black. To his surprise though, on the screen there's no more damage to be seen. And then a box with warning sign explains to him that all is fine. My friend, I think the time has come to teach you how to be less dumb. For threats and dangers everywhere attack all those who do not care. So when you grab a file online, you should be checking if it's fine. Do not be quick to open it, lest by a Trojan you are hit. On Virus Total you can test what anti-malware would suggest if they were shown your file to see if malware is what it could be. Though even then, please hurry not, so by surprise you are not caught. Rethink once more if what you've got could really be the thing you thought. My time is over, I am done, so once you close me, I am gone. What I destroyed, I'll recreate, my job was just to educate. I wish that next time you're inclined to run some unknown file you find, you spend a thought, or even 6, to not fall prey to malware tricks. A loud alert sound, like a scream, awakens Tim from this weird dream. Tim rubs his eyes and is concerned about the lesson that he's learned. Though none of what he's seen was real, some anxiousness he still could feel. Tim's wish for listeners like you is that you learn his lesson too.